Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today we have some, again, chess drama that is happening recently, and it has a lot of changes that is going on. So quick heads up before we jump into the games, and there's one game that we're going to be seeing today. FIDE just announced that there's a targeted change to its rating rules that kicks in on October 1st, 2025. That is yesterday, the time I'm recording this video. And yes, it was widely reported as being triggered by Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. His recent pattern of playing many much lower rated opponent games. And here's the short version of what really changed. The old wording capped rating differences at 400 points when calculating expected score, and effectively letting very high rated players pick up small rating games for beating much weaker opponents, and it is called farming. This also happens a lot on online chess, but on the board games it still happens. So under the new amendment, that 400-point cap is no longer applies to rated 2650 above players, because those players were the world's top 100. Usually when you're up to 2650, you are in the top world 100. And for them, the actual rating difference will be used in every case from now. And why does this matter so much? So because practically speaking, the top super grandmasters, they who are enjoying these tiny increments. For example, if you win a game, you gain 0.8 points, rating points, very against very weak opponents, maybe rated around 1900 or 2200 for them. They will now gain far less, even less, less than 0.8. And they'll lose more if they lose the game, making rating farming just now simply impossible against lower rated fields, a lot less rewarding for them. The move was designed to protect the integrity of the rating system at the elite level, and to push top players, to encourage them to play against players who are similarly skilled. But there's also, of course, another side, which is why this whole topic is nowadays so attractive for us. Lower rated players who participated in those events sometimes will benefit from the spotlight, experience, and occasional upsets sometimes. The regulation tweet will change that dynamically and would reduce opportunities for lower rated players to play against or these top rated players for a giant killer moment. A consequence many in the chess community are already debating on, and it is definitely might be a problem for us. But now that's the context, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game that Hikaru has played. He needs to reach 40 games according to the rule for him to reach, there are some complicated rules which I'm going to show you right now. And here, as we can see, this FIDE Scraps 400-point rule for 2650 plus players triggered by Nakamura. I've just talked about it. And now this tournament that I'm showing you guys, which is also very recent, Hikaru wins Iowa Chess Open, 11 more games for candidate requirement. So here, as we can see, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura won the 17th Open with a perfect 5 out of 5 score, and is 11 games away from reaching the 40 required by the end of this year to be eligible for the 2026 FIDE Chess Tournament, Candidates Tournament. He would qualify by having the highest rating, as world number 1 Grandmaster Magnus Carlsen will not be playing. So he needs to reach the 40 games, and now that is why he is farming and playing in these tournaments where players are much more weaker and lower rated, but still he can gain ratings by winning them, and with little risk. So here today, I'm going to show you guys a game that he has played with the white pieces against a teenager, if I'm not mispronouncing, Khanbutaev Artemii, if I'm not mistaken. But he is actually a pretty talented teenager, already rated 2100, but of course against Hikaru Nakamura, who is rated 2800. Still, there's a big of a gap between them. Alright, let's take a look at this game. But today in this video, our main focus is not on the game, but basically see the big difference between the world's top players against these lower rated players and what the consequences can be for changing the rating rules. So here Hikaru starts with the move c4, knight f6, and basically we have an opening that is quite theory. Knight f3, knight c6, d4 takes, and we actually transfer back into the Sicilian defense after what it looks like an English opening, but now transfers to another one. Bishop b4, knight takes c6, b takes c6. So as we can see for the black pieces, he is also playing so far really nice. Bishop d3 and e5, fixing the pawn structure, short castle, and this is all opening moves, the main lines of course. Bishop e3, rook e8, rook c1, and here I guess of course it has already got out of black's opening book, but maybe Hikaru still have some analysis of this variation. But after the move rook c1, here for black the best move is to give up the bishop pair and take on c3, and of course white takes back with the rook. And now to go for the move d5 to open up the center. Even though white has the bishop here, but really especially the light square bishop is having some trouble here. And let's say if we open up the position and you open up more, then after black takes back with the knight here, now this knight is really strong on d5, forking the rook and the bishop, and black can't win the bishop pair back at any time, make also white lose the bishop pair. But not only that, the light square bishop is having a really nice scope on both diagonals as well. So here, however, bishop c3 was the best move, but instead here for black, Khanbutaev here, he plays this move queen e7, which is a little bit dubious because it slows his development, and his idea should have been to go for d5, but now the queen is out of behind, not behind the pawn anymore, and makes it much harder. And here Hikaru goes for the best move, a3, attacks the bishop. Bishop goes to c5. This might have been for black's idea to trade off the bishops, but d5 would have been a more theory and standard idea for black. Bishop takes, queen takes, but it just simply gives white more tempo with the move knight a4. Queen e7, c5, and here Hikaru plays all of these moves really accurate, and his idea is to fix black's pawn structure and making it really hard for the pawn to push. Now if you push, unfortunately here white can take en passant, and after queen takes d6, we see that black's pawn structure right now is really ugly. And after queen c2, for example, threatening the c6 pawn with the idea of the rook coming out, white is gonna have a really big advantage here. So here after queen e7, a3, and we reach this position. Queen e7 back, c5, and here the move rook d8. Black is of course trying to push this d-pawn, because if he doesn't push it, then this light square bishop will be trapped inside, because it really cannot go to this side, since white's light square bishop is doing a really nice job preventing it. So here after the move queen e2, with the idea of course lining up the rooks, and here maybe queen e2 is not as good as the move queen c2 due to the fact that of course if black were to open up, then after of course en passant, rook takes, we keep the pressure on the c6 pawn, but also after rook fd1, it's very clear that the queen on c2 is definitely more flexible than the queen on e2, which was played in the game. But of course queen e2 is not bad, just not as good as queen c2, and black played d5 anyways. After c takes d6, queen takes d6 was played, but obviously you should take with a rook. The rook defends the pawn, which is more effective than you defend with the queen. And also in the future, maybe bishop e6, and you can line up the rooks on the d file, which is also possible. But instead, queen d6 was played, and here Hikaru plays this move, rook c3, and as we can see here, some of the arrows that, first of all, lining up the rooks on the c file, and with the idea of going b4, knight c5, and it is basically an unstoppable plan for black. So we can see Hikaru is having a really clear idea. Queen e3, improving his queen's position, queen d4. And now this is a move that a lot of us will play, because when we're playing against someone who is a lot higher rated than us and is definitely really strong, and especially here world number 2, you do want to trade out the queens because it seems it will be safer. But sometimes, as we know, these top players, they are more experienced, and if you go into endgames, they will be sure that they are not going to be worse, and there are no tactics or anything. They're in a situation where they're very comfortable with no risks of losing, that's for sure. And then they can just go for their experiences, use their experiences, and make you just blunder. So sometimes these queen trading moves, you have to be really sure and calculate them before you play. And here the best move, not that easy to see, but is to play the move knight h5 with the idea, of course, with knight f4. And it's not that easy for white to stop, because if you play g3, you somehow just weaken these light squares and black will have compensation. But here queen d4 was played anyways, and after queen d4, rook d4, knight c5, knight d7, and here knight a6. Although here maybe it is slightly better for Hikaru to play knight b3 to gain a tempo by attacking the rook, but knight a6 of course also has its own reasons. Knight b6, knight c5 back. Well, Hikaru noticed that knight b3 is a better idea, and he goes for it. Rook d6 back, f3. It is an inaccuracy here considered by chess.com, but I think in human eyes this is a really logical move. But I guess the only way that it is inaccurate is because, as we can see here, the bishop on g4 looks quite scary, preventing the rook from going to d1 and these light squares all controlled by it. But really, white doesn't need to go to d1, and white's idea is to go to c1. So the bishop on g4 is actually a little bit misplaced, and it should just be left there. The bishop, if it were to go back to e6, it will be better for black. So here, Hikaru, there's no need for him to play f3. Just follow his idea with maybe knight a5, and to line up the rooks as well. That will be his idea. But here, however, he played f3, and after bishop e6, then knight a5, knight b6. Well, this is a mistake. But here the best move for black is to play rook b8, and after b4, c5, b5, even though pawn structure may be a little bit closed. But then after knight b6, let's say here, bishop c2, with the idea of going for this d file or maybe bishop b3 ideas, and attacking the c5 pawn, of course. So white is still better, but black can try to set up a fortress to defend. But here, however, black decides to go for some counterplay and play this move knight b6. And here simply with the idea of going knight a4, which is really tricky here, and it's actually really deadly, but Hikaru just defends with bishop c2. Even though b3 is going to be a more accurate way, bishop c2 not bad, of course. Rook c8, b4. So Hikaru, instead of going b3, wants to go b4, so that is why he defends with the bishop. And now he gains a really nice outpost on c5, ready for the knight to go there. So here, king f8, rook c1, putting pressure on the c6 pawn, and here king e7. And now white's idea is very clear with these arrows to use this whole pin, and the king goes to e3, and then the bishop comes to d3 to b5, because it will be impossible at that point for black to take without losing the rook on c8. So this is just a brief idea of what white should be playing on the very next couple of moves. And did Hikaru go for it? Well, he did. King f1, bishop d7. Now black is already defending passively. King e2, Hikaru goes for his idea without hesitating. And here, bishop d3. Just very clear thoughts. And bishop b5 on the next move, it seems that it is already unstoppable. f5, but simply here rook c5 with the idea of first of all fixing the pawn and attacking the e5 pawn. At the same time, bishop b5 you can play at any point. f4, king goes back, and then bishop b5 here. The c6 pawn is basically just falling at this point, and it is hopeless. King e6, but already as we can see, black is just moving back and forth without any clear plan. And after bishop c6 here, black resigned and Hikaru won this game. This, I believe, is the last round of the Loa Open, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this was the last game. And as we can see here, Hikaru is, of course, having a perfect 5 out of 5 and ranked first place. Still, there are 11 games left for him to reach the 40 game. But already now, since he has been farming or playing in these much more lower rated tournaments, there are some debates going on about the new rules that has changed by FIDE. What do you guys think? You can leave comments down below, and hope you guys enjoyed my recap of this game. This is not the most important thing about this video, but we did learn a lot of things from it. And well, yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video as well, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.